Hello, everyone, and welcome to Blaugrana Everything, and welcome back to the channel. I don't know which of the platforms you're tuning into this one from, whether it's going to be the YouTube or it's going to be the Apple Podcast or it's going to be the Spotify one. I don't know where it is, but welcome back. Welcome back to myself as well. Well, as you can tell from my voice, I've kind of been under the weather for a bit, so that's why you haven't heard so much from me since the match review for Barca's last home game of the season. That was the Betis win. What was it? A 2-1 win or a 3-1 win? I forget. 3-1. Yeah. The Betis 3-1 win. That was like the last time that I uploaded anything. And I'll be honest with you, I was kind of, as in sickness aside, I was also kind of waiting for Barca Femeni to play the Champions League final before I made my next post, because I always kind of intended to have just like a podcast upload kind of thing, just because I was really looking forward to the Mestalla game. I knew that there wasn't much for Barca in that one, and so even seeing the performance levels that we saw from them in that match, it wasn't too much of a surprise, honestly speaking. I'd say it's maybe more or less what you would have expected from them. So that brings us to this moment where we are right now. And this is going to be one of the longer format type of videos, which you're going to get a few more of the longer formats on YouTube as well. But also, on the podcast apps, because we're going to be doing a bit of yapping, because right now there's so much to talk about, whether it be from the Barca Femeni side to the Barca men's side as well. Some of the stuff that we're seeing, transfers going down right now, it's crazy. Like, I did not expect the first few days after the season ends to be this busy, but it looks like Deco is trying to get a lot of business done early. And man, we're going to talk about some of these deals that are going down, like the Gordon deal, which at the time of recording this is on a Wednesday now. It looks like it's a Wednesday night. It looks like he's going to be doing his medicals with Barca on the Thursday morning. So, by the end of Thursday, we could see the club officially making the announcement that Anthony Gordon is signed for the club. But so far, we've got the Fabrizio, here we go. So, there's a lot which we have to talk about, because we need to make sense of Barca's transfer policy right now and what exactly is going on and how I feel about it, honestly, and how I think quite a few other fans also feel. Of course, I'm only speaking for the fans whose opinions I have access to on the online platforms, and there's a mix. I'll definitely say that. But anyway, let's start with, I think, the more recent news. I mean, man, we'll start with the news on departures, actually, because there are quite a few goodbyes that are being said by Barcelona, the institution, this summer. Obviously, we could start with the men's team, where we had Robert Lewandowski, scoring in his last game for Barcelona, and of course, he had the farewell at Camp Nou, and since his farewell, we've seen at least two more farewells as well from Barca Femeni, and it's been two people who, honestly, you could say they've been like the Puyo and the Messi of this project that Barcelona has had with the women's team. Personally speaking, I only started watching the women's team around 2019, when things started getting really bad with the men's team for some reason. That's when we also started to get the most access in as far as live matches for the women's team. And hey, it was a blessing in disguise, because they more than carried us through that very, very dark period, when we're dealing with a lot of the Bartomeu, days, and we all know the nonsense that came from that era of Barca. So, two of the players who, for me, defined this era of success Barcelona have had, where, they've met Lyon in the final and they've beaten Lyon in the final. That's now on two occasions, if I'm not mistaken. So the fact that two of their four wins in the past 6 years have come against, arguably, the biggest rival that they have in the Champions League. And mind you, if Barca didn't lose those two finals to Lyon and to Arsenal as well, we'd be looking at 6 for 6 here with Barca Femeni, which is, just to show you how dominant they've been. They've made the last 6 Champions League finals. And I don't know if there's anybody who's brave enough to bet against them not making a 7th. But anywho, if they do make the 7th, they will do it this time without the presence of La Reina, and you know who that is. At least if you're a Culer, you definitely know Alexia, Putellas. But then we're also going to have to see them do it without, like I said, the Puyol of this Barcelona team. Although, that's maybe even like a lazy comparison, but I say the Puyol because she's been more like the heart at that defense. That's, of course, Mapi Leon, or Mariona, Leon. And man, it's going to be crazy seeing Barcelona without both Mapi and Alexia. I mean, of course, we've seen them in stretches without one or the other because they've both kind of had their issues with injuries. But seeing them without both, Alexia and Mapi is going to be pretty interesting, But it was great that they got to be sent off with that sent off. To be sent away. Sent off means a red card, right? They got to be sent away with the big Champions League win against Lyon, 4-0 in the Champions League final against one of the most well-funded teams, we could put it that way. They're so well-funded. These guys were chasing after Aitana, offering her a blank check and stuff like that. So, it's like beating PSG at this point in time, to be honest. One of those teams that has all the money, all the resources, and also a very good coach who once coached Barcelona, who once won trebles with Barcelona. Sound familiar? It was good, of course, to see Giraldez once again, and I have to be honest, him being in that final, him being the opponent, it did make me nervous. I wasn't sure if Barca would be able to do it, but they got the job done. And so that's something which we have to definitely, be happy for. Because, like I said, this is a dynasty Barcelona potentially have on their hands. If they could carry this on for maybe even 4 more years or even another 6 years, then, all of a sudden they're just right up there with Lyon as one of the most dominant teams in the Champions League, on the European scene. So, yeah, that was pretty awesome to see. And of course, after Barca Femeni played their last match of the season against Real Sociedad, a 2-1 win, Aitana back on the score sheet as well. We then got to see the farewell for Alexia as well as for Mapi Leon. So, all of, wishing them all the best with wherever that they go with their careers. We're hearing rumors that Alexia is going to be, heading over to Chelsea, as it used to be, Lionesses, right? So we'll see how all of that goes. But, whatever she does next in her career, we'll be wishing her all the best. And hopefully, we can see a few more stars, the Sarah Jodis, the Shirtenlebs start to step up as well as, Alexia steps on and steps up as Alexia steps away. Yeah, I did say I had a minimal. You can see the evidence. As Alexia steps away and now leaves, a hole, honestly, in that midfield, which will be looking for somebody to step in and fill it. And I just know that Real Madrid's, women's team are just so glad to see Alexia Putellas go, because her record against them is honestly something of a filthy record. Yeah, she really enjoys her time playing against them. Okay, enough for Barca Femeni. Let's go back to looking at the men's team and looking at some of what's going on transfer-wise. So the first thing that I have to ask a question about really is what Barca's transfer policy is for this window. I mean, I can say for sure right now that they're trying to get deals done as early as possible. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Because we do know that there's a World Cup coming up, and a World Cup means games, and games means chances of players getting injured. So, obviously, if you're signing a guy before the World Cup, if he gets injured at the World Cup, you're not going to have him after the World Cup. And then, of course, there's also there's just the inconvenience of having to do a deal after the World Cup. The players' valuation could shoot up depending how they perform there. You could also see stuff like, not having enough time to get deals done just because, sometimes, the other club, the selling club is going to be less desperate to get a deal done, knowing that they in turn don't have enough time to like go out there and find a replacement. So from that perspective, you could say that there are more positives to getting the deal done early than there are to getting it done late. So for now, I would say, okay, maybe that's the correct approach Barcelona are taking. The next thing which I have to say is, what is this 80 million for Anthony Gordon approach that Barca is taking? Honestly speaking, well, in my head, I was planning on talking about possible transfer targets for Barca in this, transfer window, the kind of profiles which I would like to see Barca maybe looking into, the type of players who would like to see them being interested in. And Anthony Gordon does not figure into any of the profiles. I was thinking more along the lines of a left winger who can give you 1v1 dominance, right? Because we've seen, like, if you could look at PSG, for example, that's always the best way to go. Look at PSG, look at MSN Barca. Okay, if you can have two wingers who are very good at 1v1s and creating from 1v1 situations, then you're going to have, infinitely more ways in which you can hurt opponents. So seeing Anthony Gordon coming in, who is, if we're being honest, something like a downgrade on what we've had so far with Rafinha, it does make you wonder, like, what exactly is going on. Now, I do remember with Flick's renewal, we did hear some news that Hansi Flick is going to be having more of a say in transfers. So is this one of those transfers where it's Hansi Flick having a big say? That is where we might have to stop and think about things a bit, because as much as my head is telling me this is not the deal that Barcelona needs to be making, and as far as the left winger is concerned, that's what my heart is telling me, but my mind is also telling me, that's what my mind is telling me, but my heart is also telling me, hey, you know what, if it's Hansi Flick, you can trust Papa Hansi, okay? You can trust Hansi Flick because he knows how to get what he wants out of players. And I mean, it's hard to argue. You could see what he's done with the likes of Eric Garcia, the likes of Gerard Martin, the likes of Ferran Torres, and even the upgrade that he gave to Rafinha as well. So there's that as well. And that's more or less where I am right now, which is like kind of torn between the two, torn between trusting my, my mind, trusting, the numbers, trusting the true values of what we see out there, what we've seen a player do, the eye test and all that kind of stuff, versus trusting, the man who's done so much for us, the man who's tugged so many heartstrings since he came to this club, and who, more than anybody else, not maybe except for Laporta, who wants to win a Champions League at Barca? No one wants to win a Champions League at Barca more than Flick, except for Laporta. So you do sit there and think, yeah, I'm going to have to trust him at the end of the day, right? So that's what this is looking like. And like I said, it's not like this. The club is definitely not going back on this. It's pretty clear. Gordon is who they want. And it doesn't look like Newcastle United are putting any barriers in the way of this transfer, the way they did with Isak, probably because Barca are coming pretty early on in the window, and you could maybe argue it's why the value isn't as much as what Newcastle were demanding for Isak, even though, I think that 80 million for somebody who is likely to come and work as a backup forward, for me, that's like, that's ridiculous. I don't know when life became this. Someone joked that it's because of the war, The war with Iran is just causing inflation in prices of everything, including backup wingers. So, maybe there's that. But yeah, aside from that, really, I don't really have that much more to say, whether in like by way of criticism or by way of support for what we are seeing here. I just have, the question of, it would be nice if maybe there was a bit more, I guess, transparency in as far as what the transfer policy is. But, we are being told that apparently the pursuit of Gordon for 80 million isn't going to hinder any operations for a number 9. So that leaves us, of course, again, back to the number 9 talk. And since he's not going to the World Cup, Joao Pedro, for me, I guess, is most likely now going to be the leading candidate. We know that there are two candidates, in principle. There's Julian Alvarez, who we are told Atleti are demanding 150 million for him, which again, that's ridiculous money. He shouldn't be costing more than what we are paying for Anthony Gordon in a realistic market. But hey, you know how these things are. Because of the way the market is, we're basically going to be asked to pay twice as much for Alvarez as we are paying for Gordon, which I guess it's probably just Atleti's, what's the word that I'm looking for? Diplomatic way of saying they don't want to do a deal. But then, Barca can probably get them around to doing a deal, seeing as we're told Atleti are interested in Marc Casado, which for me, that's a deal which makes so much sense for Atleti as well, looking at what we got from Casado just, a couple seasons ago. So we know the type of midfielder that he is. And yeah, that fits in a lot to the Atleti kind of system. Somebody who's gritty, who can win the ball, and also who can, on occasion, play a good long pass to a winger who's in space. So yeah, we'll see how all of that goes. Like I said, I'm still thinking that Barca might just opt to favor the Joao Pedro route over the Julian Alvarez option. As much as Alvarez is who Laporta wants, Joao Pedro is who Deco wants as well. And, there are just less hurdles with getting Joao Pedro than with getting Alvarez. Plus, I don't think we're going to pay anything in the hundreds for Joao Pedro, which is crazy when you think about it. Paying less money to Premier League teams for Premier League players than, you would pay to Atleti for, La Liga players. Since when? I guess Atleti are trying to establish themselves now as a big boy club. And, if you're going to be a big boy club, you need to hold on to your big time players like Julian Alvarez. So we'll see ultimately how all of that does play out. The one thing, though, that worries me is that so far I'm not hearing any talk about a right back. I'm not hearing any talk about a centre back. All I'm hearing is left winger, backup, and striker. And these for me were the pain points for Barca. These are the areas for me where I thought Barca definitely needs reinforcements. So look, provided say you make Joao Cancelo a permanent deal, then that should be enough for left back. I think between him and Balde, if you can have them competing for that spot, you're good at left back. But what does that mean for right back? I mean, we've heard that there are teams that are interested in Jules Koundé. I don't know how interested Jules Koundé is in those teams, though. So that remains to be seen. And once we get, I guess, feedback from that, we'll see how things will probably go for Barca. But I'm guessing there's probably going to be a big chunk of deals that are going to have to happen post-World Cup. So my only hope is that during the World Cup, of course, we do not suffer any injuries to the likes of Araujo, to the likes of Koundé, Although I did hear, I think that should have been from Tony Juan Marti on Siempre Positivo, saying that it's unlikely, Araujo will leave Barca this coming summer. He might want, one more chance to try and win a spot back in the Barca team, which I guess I could see that happening. But then, it's definitely going to be dependent on, what other salaries Barca can get off the books. So we know Lewandowski is off the books, and we know it's highly likely that Ansu Fati as well is going to be off the books. And if those two are off the books, then yeah, Barcelona should definitely be back to 141, I think, with the savings that they'll make just from those two salaries. So we'll wait to see how all of that goes. It's been good though, doing one of these longer format kind of podcasty types of uploads. Let me know, please, what you thought of it. Rate the podcast for those listening from a Spotify and an Apple podcast, and also for those tuning in from YouTube. Those who are watching this on YouTube somehow, do leave your comments and your thoughts. And I mean, by the time this is being uploaded, maybe on YouTube, Anthony Gordon might already be a Barcelona player. So if that's the case, then welcome Anthony. Obviously, we wish all the best for you and all the success in the world, and hopefully you can hit the ground running as soon as you get into camp and just get into the swing of things. You will see a lot of stuff being said about you online. Don't pay attention to any of it. What you need to do is just pay attention to whatever Hansi Flick is going to be saying. So that's what we're going to be hoping that happens. And yeah, we'll see who else is going to be coming on board at Barca. Hopefully, this isn't going to be the 5th season in a row where Laporta pump fakes buying a right back, buying a center back. We really need those positions sorted out. I mean, okay, in fairness to him, he did sign Christensen and Kunde just maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah, 5 years ago. But we need that right back reinforcement. We haven't had it since, I don't know, I'm trying to remember who the last decent right back Barcelona bought was. And it was probably Adriano. Who was Dani Alves' backup right back? I can't think of Barca making. Well, I guess you could say Semedo had some potential to be a backup right back, but you don't know. You all know how that ended. Anyway, I've said a lot. But you let me know whatever thoughts that you might have if you're watching on YouTube. But aside from that, I thank you all for tuning in. To have a great day and Forza Barca.